Hey, everybody, and welcome aboard. Here we are at the Blue Heart webcast, and this is our special feature that we do, Murder and Mayhem, with Lieutenant Joe and Marisa Joy. Marisa, how are you?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do another episode, talk a little crime. How are you?
Very good. It's always great to have you in because when we have our conversations about these kind of things, we're both kind of obviously I'm a criminal investigator. I'm drawn to this, but so are you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always said you'd made an excellent FBI agent or detective because you got that mind for it.
Oh, yeah. I'm an armchair sleuth.
That's an armchair sleuth. I like that. All right. So I don't know. What is it you want to talk about? What's going on? Anything out there you have questions about I can help you with?
Yeah, I am sure a lot of viewers as well have seen the updates, and there's been a lot of them over the past month on the Idaho 4 case. And I specifically wanted to talk about the autopsy results that got released because a lay person is not going to be able to understand them the way you could break it down.
Okay. I think that's great. And I think, on a previous episode, if everybody goes back on the channel and takes a look, I did an episode on what does stabbing mean? What's the purpose of a stabbing weapon? The number of stabs and all these kind of things. So for law enforcement officers, it's important for them to understand those kind of dynamics because one of the things I talk about at a crime scene is that if you listen carefully with the trained ear, your crime scene will talk to you. It will say things to you. You'll be able to read by what happened in the crime scene and what happened to the victims. It could tell you a lot about the mindset of the person who did it. So what is it that you know about this case?
Well, I followed the case pretty closely when everything was coming out, and I feel like I stopped following it as closely once the, family's impact statements were read. That was like the big thing where people felt like there was a wrap on the case. But I'm curious because something that's always stuck out to me is the fact that Brian Kohberger left some roommates alive, which always leads me when I think about the stabbing aspect to think of if this crime took place in, I think, 12 minutes, 13 seconds or something, they estimate, to kill 4 people that brutally in that amount of time is exhausting. And he was stabbing them. So I'm curious the significance of stabbing compared to wouldn't it have been easier to have a gun with a silencer or something?
Sure. And that's some good points. So first of all, silencers are not as easy to get as people think they are. Most times silencers are illegal. You have to have to get a suppressor. Law enforcement can get suppressors. I'm sure private collectors can get them, but there's rules around them. It's not like on TV, everybody's got a silencer, they put it on there and they're shooting all around. So let's talk about that situation a little bit.
Was the knife maybe just his most accessible weapon, or do you think there's more to it?
Well, I think you're probably onto something there. He had access to a knife, and a knife is a very personal weapon. Now, people, if you're not a person that considers committing crime, assaults, stabbing someone is a very, very personal, up close kind of a killing. If I'm mad at you, if I'm angry with you and I have a gun, I can shoot you from 2 feet away or 50 feet away. Mm-hmm. And I can achieve my purpose of shooting you. It's very impersonal, right? You pull that trigger and it's the bullet that goes to get him. When it's a knife and I'm standing there, and we don't think of this. People don't think of this unless they're in this situation. Plunging a knife into another person is unbelievably crazy.
Yeah,
and it's very brutal. It is very brutal. Now, when we look at this situation, so we're talking about how long did this take and how can it go? Well, when we study people who commit these kind of crimes, you find out that there's reasons that people do what they do. So I have posited all along that he had some kind of an attraction to these girls.
Yeah.
And early on when I heard this information, and this is why I'm very frustrated, as many law enforcement people are, as to why the prosecutor agreed to let him plead guilty to the 4 murders, to first-degree murder, but not have to explain himself.
Yeah.
Because it would be nice to know his motivation, because we learn from every case we investigate what happened.
It would also be nice to know, like, his planning. How long was he there? How many times did he check it out? Like, these are things that could help law enforcement in the future when they're dealing with a similar situation. So I remember your open letter you wrote because it was so frustrating that he just gets to be silent.
Right. I wrote the open letter to the judge, make him tell us, because you're right. That information for a criminal investigator helps us when we see another incident to try and figure out, is it something we can do for prevention? Is it something we can do for connecting the dots to bring somebody in? So when I first saw this, I was actually watching the news with your mother, and we were watching this, and this is a horrific crime. 4 young girls. I have a young daughter. You kind of connect to that. And I remember listening to the facts that we knew, because nobody was there, only the cops that were there. But you got 4 young people brutally stabbed to death in their home. And one of the first things I had to ask was, okay, were they sexually assaulted? They were not. Was anything stolen? No, nothing was stolen. So now you start to get into the mind of the killer. And one of the things that I suggest everybody does, law enforcement people, is learn about these things. So my book, The Investigation, goes into what goes in somebody's mind when they're committing horrific crimes, right? So I looked at those two facts: no sexual assaults and nothing stolen. So somebody just went in there purposely to what? Kill those young ladies and that young man?
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Do you think he went in for one and was surprised to find multiple in the one bedroom? Or do you think he went in just for the rampage?
Well, I that's a great question, actually, because we know there were other people in that house that he confronted, but he didn't kill. So you have to look at that and say, and this is where, if he had told us what he did and why, would be very helpful to unraveling his mind, but it can help us later on. So I'm thinking that there was my initial thought that he didn't sexually assault anybody and he didn't steal anything, but he brutally murdered them with a long bladed knife. Now, this is where you got to go back to this other episode where I was talking about stabbing as a criminal action to understand, what does that all stand for? Well, one of the things, and again, I don't mean to keep referring to my book, but I try and give a lot of information out of my columns and my shows and all that. When we understand a lot of what people do in crimes, especially these brutal crimes, there's a psychosexual component. And what I break down in my book is there are want crimes and there are drive crimes. A want crime is, I want drugs, so I'm going to go into your apartment and steal your stuff. I need to pay my bills, so I commit a robbery on the street. But if I see a cop maybe, or I feel like I'm going to get caught, I'm not going to do it. A drive crime, on the other hand, is something that's into each of us individually, and it affects us continually. It's a thought, like a serial killer.
Like BTK. That was in his head.
Exactly. In his head. He wanted to control those people, bind, torture, sexually assault, then kill them, right? This is something he could not stop thinking about. He could put it off, but he couldn't stop. It was a drive.
And he was putting himself in positions to almost get caught constantly. It's like he had no regard, or less regard than someone who was just doing like a want crime.
Right. And we see these people that commit these drive crimes. It's because it's constantly weighing on them. It's constantly speaking to them that they have to satiate. So what we see with serial killers very often is that they will fantasize about it, think about it. Maybe they start out as a peeping Tom. They work their way through it till finally they touch, or they kidnap. And then they torture the person, scare them. Part of the joy is the fear that this person's in. Then they kill them, and they often take a souvenir, or they go back to the crime scene to relive it, right? It's a drive they can't get out of their head, and it's a psychosexual drive. The sex drive of human beings, which we all have one, goes from, very low to very high, and everything in between. That's the normal human range of sexuality. When it goes beyond normal and it starts to get into fetishes and these unending thoughts of control and power and hurting people
and like pain, I feel like
pain, how that can be enjoyable, but to some people it is. But you start to see that now you're in abnormal kind of thoughts, and that can lead to crime. So go back to Brian here. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying he didn't sexually assault and he didn't steal anything. So why would he go in there? Did he have a grudge? And like you said, did he go in there to kill the boy because he had a grudge with him? He had a fight with him, and the girls were there. Well, the people that he killed were in two different rooms. So he didn't have to go from one room to another unless, he peeked in the room and he saw the two girls. Well, that's not him. Oh, there he is. Let me go get him. And we don't know that had anything to do with this. But when I saw that and I'm watching it, I said, it seems to me that there were some indicators here that this might be this killer might be someone who is along the spectrum of someone who has a some kind of a strange fetish with his personality. And these are people that he wanted these girls and he couldn't get them. There's some indication that he might have approached one of them at one point and she blew him off, and it didn't work, and he got upset and he got angry and he wanted to go back and attack them because they rejected him. And this is the incel community I'm talking about. So the incel people, they have this feeling that the guys can't get the girls that they want, the top 10% most beautiful, eligible, beautiful girls. They can't get them. Those girls only want the top girls, guys in the world. They call them chads, the top 10% of men, like me. They want the most beautiful, handsome, successful men. And they get very frustrated.
It used to be called natural selection when women wouldn't want to mate with the losers. And now they have a movement. Help the losers. Right. We're involuntarily celibate. Help us.
Right. And this is where these people that internalize this sex drive is internalized. They're angry that they can't get these girls. These girls are all beautiful young women. And he goes there using a large bladed knife. And this is important to understand. The knife as a weapon is a phallic symbol. Now, people are uncomfortable. Law enforcement shouldn't be uncomfortable talking about this. It's a phallic symbol, right? It's a way to control this other person and their body, and you're plunging it into them. It's very reminiscent of the sex act, only twisted, right? You see, the thinking is twisted. So it's not a normal person. So when I saw that, I said, I think I see some incel qualities here. And I remember your mother being funny. She says, oh, okay, detective author, you know everything. Why don't you call them? And I said, well, I wasn't there, so I don't know. And about 2 weeks later, there was an FBI profiler on. And he was talking about it. He goes, I see some incel qualities to this crime. And I looked at her, and your mother looks at me. She goes, all right. You know it. So I found that funny. But when I look at this, and this is why we would have wanted him to tell us why he did this, because we can look at it, that knife, that big bladed knife, to repeatedly stab. Now, the autopsy, we heard that these girls were murdered by the knife and the boy were murdered by the knife. Well, now we see that one girl was stabbed 50-something times. Another person, 30-something times, 20 times, multiple stabs. When we see domestic violence incidents that involve a stabbing, whether it's a straight relationship or a gay relationship, when there's a stabbing involved within a relationship, we often see multiple stabbings because it is that there's a psychosexual component to it. And this relationship has gone bad. You've betrayed me. And people stab multiple times.
And also, I feel like there's an element when you have a stabbing crime, at least it seems to me, like if you're gonna stab someone once, multiple times, it's so up close. Like, it's not a crime, because a stabbing, you could stab once and be like, oh my God, we need to get you to the hospital. But when it's repeated, there's that constant choice. You chose 50-something times to attack this person. It's a different level.
Yes. And also, now we look at that. 50-something stabs around her head, her face, her throat, and her chest. Think about the expenditure of energy to do that.
Yeah.
So when you look at the victim and you look at the injuries to the victim and you look at the scene, that's what I mean. The scene will talk to you. What does that say? Does that say someone who got into a fight or an argument and stabbed somebody and said, oh my gosh, what did I do? Or does that speak to someone who's angry or possessed with some kind of unbelievable rage? Is that what you see in it? Look at the O.J. Simpson murder. These young people were not just stabbed, he almost cut their heads off. He was very angry. Now we know the context of the relationships, right? So now we look at this and we see what happened to these girls and this young man. Very, very violent attack, no theft, no sexual assault. I think there is an incel quality to what went on here, and I wish the judge had made him submit to some kind of psychological exams and to bring this up.
And I don't know, I know you watched the family impact statements. I don't know if you remember the one older sister with her long black hair who gave that really powerful statement to him. And it's interesting. She's like on TikTok. She kind of talks about her experience in that modern way. And she agrees, like she thinks of him as a total incel. And it was so interesting that she crafted her final statement to him in a way apparently that would bother an incel. She said to him, "You're nothing to us. You think you're good enough." Like she really was trying to get at that "I'm not good enough" feeling, and she just hammered in on it. And I think that's so interesting.
And it is, because
he was sitting there, like you could see it was the only person that got him to like shrug and be uncomfortable.
Yes. And for her, psychologically, she can't get at him revenge-wise. She can't hurt him. She can't do anything to him physically for what he did to her sister. But if she understands that his motivation was that he felt like a nothing, these beautiful girls rejected him, and he was going to go take it, and then this girl calls him out for being a nothing. That's something he lives with every minute. It's probably his biggest punishment, that he has to live with that. But very interesting. So one of the things that I talk about, and again, when I talk about in the book, what I did is I wrote my book about a brutal double homicide where there was a psychosexual component of infidelity, or a belief of infidelity. And the killer in the book stabbed the mother of his child, his love interest, stabbed her 33 times. Again, with a big old knife, 33 times. What does that tell you? The damage that the person does speaks to their anger, their mental state, and it can help you, investigators that are listening, it can help you down the road when you get a suspect to be able to ask them questions that will elicit those feelings, because those feelings as a drive, they control them, especially if they know they're bad, and they do know they're bad. But if you keep bringing up these kind of things and you start to activate that drive, often they will slip and say something, or you can provoke them into saying something that leads to new questions.
Don't those people, they say, kind of want to brag? They want to talk about themselves and like how they are smarter. Like they kind of have that drive, like OJ, if I did it, he writes afterwards, because they have this drive to almost talk about it. Do you think that's like similar if you push them enough?
I think from all the cases that I've studied, there are people like that have that narcissistic drive. Hey, look what I did. I am somebody. I think there might be something out. I don't think it's every single instance, but I know that, I call it in the book and in my training, I call it poking the drive. You poke that drive, and if you don't do it negatively, you do it in a certain way that activates it in their head. You get them talking. Maybe you would, you might ask questions about, boy, I don't know that you did this or not, but I can imagine the person that did this was very, very powerful. I mean, they must have really thought this through. They must have had a lot of power at that. And you will see their body language. They will respond to that, right? And that tells you you're on the right track. So I find this very interesting. I find it unbelievably tragic for the girls and that young man and for their families. And this guy sits in a jail cell, and hopefully our courts stay strong over the years and they don't decide, well, he's been in there long enough, let's let him out, because he's an absolute danger to society. But we could have learned a lot here.
We could have learned a lot. And I will say, as a final note from Marisa, I hear he's not enjoying prison life. And I hope that continues, because he may not make it till the court system fails us, honestly.
Well, that's a nice civilian point of view, my dear. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. I want to thank Marisa for being here with us. Remember, Murder and Mayhem with Lieutenant Joe and Marisa Joy. Not only is she brilliant and lovely, she's really very, very smart, and we have really cool conversations. So we're going to try and do more and more of these episodes, because Marisa, as a civilian, sure, she grew up with this and she heard me talk and writing and my courses and all. But as a regular person, she comes up with some really interesting points of view that us investigators need to pay attention to. So Marisa, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I want to be back, so let's do another one soon.
So remember, what do they say? Ring the bell, like, subscribe, tell your friends about the Blue Heart webcast. We're out here all the time, and we're on podcast networks, the audio version of this program. All right, everybody, have a great day.